Welcome to another episode of the New College Mindset. I'm your host, Jerica, and I am thrilled to have Dr. Jamie Williams, Senior Director of Scholarships and Enrichment Programs at Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation, here on the show. This is exciting, guys, because not only is Dr. Williams the person running the Coca-Cola Scholars Program, but he is, get this, guys, a first-gen college student himself, which is like unbelievable when I found this out. So as always, I want you guys to get ready because we're going to learn a lot today. And I can't wait for you to hear Dr. Williams' first-gen story and feel empowered to apply to become a Coca-Cola Scholar. Dr. Williams, welcome to the New College Mindset.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, where you went to school, and your favorite college memory?
Yeah. As Jerica said, I am a first-generation college student. I'm also an only child. So that adds another level of complication when you start thinking about college roommates and sharing space. But I'm from a small town in South Carolina. Jerica, if you look around the room you're in and double it, that's about the size of the town I'm from. So
What?
10, 12 stoplights. Class of 125 or so that graduated high school. A good number of us did go on to college. And I had several friends who went with me to the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina, where I got my undergraduate degree there. I changed my major 7 times in about a year and a half.
What?
Thank goodness.
7 times?
7 times. And I thought it was going to be a pharmacy major. Then I got to the first day of Chemistry 101 and went, oh, no. What have I done? And then changed to a few rounds of undecided before landing in the journalism school and ended up with a degree in advertising and public relations. So broadly working in communications for a while before moving into higher education space, working on several college campuses before joining the Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation. I just started my 10th year with the Coke Scholars, so very exciting.
Congratulations. Congrats.
You. My work anniversary was 1 week ago.
Did they give you something? I don't know, I'm sorry to cut you off. Did they give you something to celebrate or?
Well, there's always free Coca-Cola beverages around. So I just took a celebratory Coke Zero and that was it. Or Coke Zero Sugar, I should say, keeping up with the change in branding. But got my undergrad at South Carolina in journalism, as I said, my master's a few years later from South Carolina as well in higher education administration. I did a lot of things in college that helped me see that a career path was working with college students, working with success programs to help students figure out how to navigate the college space. And recently, I completed my doctorate in higher education leadership. So my plan was to get the doctorate by early 30s. So it's only about 15 years behind that goal. But goals can evolve and change. And that's a great lesson to hear along the way as well. And after you prompted me to think about favorite college memory, I'm old. So individual memories are tough to come by. But collectively, I would say college is, and this is not unique to me, but one of the things I've shared with students that I've advised when I've worked on the college campus with Coke Scholars who go to dozens of colleges around the country is college is really where you become who you are or start to become who you are personally, professionally. And so collectively, I look back at all the experiences I had working as a student orientation leader for 2 summers, helping students figure out how to sign up for classes, how to choose a meal plan, how to deal with roommate conflicts. I worked with my undergraduate main academic advisor in the J School, the journalism program, to start a peer academic advising group that would support her, who had a huge load of advisees to help figure out what classes to take each semester. Like, let juniors and seniors who've traveled this road before, the freshmen and sophomores, help you figure out at least get to 80% of their schedule done. So those 2 things in particular are my greatest college memories because it, again, set me on the path to where I am professionally. Met my wife in my master's program, and she's in the higher education space as well. So there's a number of reasons that college was a great experience for me. Didn't start off that way because, again, first gen, having to figure it out, being an only child, navigating roommate space, some challenges to figure out, but I survived. You can see the gray hair. So I say some of that goes back 30 years, but it's well-earned gray hair.
I've really, it's so nice. Like when you're looking back on college and you're just like, man, I met my spouse. I was able to do these things. And like you said, you learn so much about yourself. And if we can stay in this college space for a moment, when you look back as like a first generation college student, which our listeners are, What piece of advice do you wish you'd heard while in school that maybe you think our first or second gen students would find really helpful?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that have emerged the last several years in the literature and the study of working with first generation college students and college students broadly that I don't think were clearly identified back when I started college in the previous century. But they're linked. And the first thing is this idea of a hidden curriculum or invisible syllabus that if you
Yes.
come from a situation where your parents went to college, they could say you have to go to the bursar by this date to approve your
Mhm,
financial aid or pay your tuition for the semester. The
mhm,
hidden curriculum will tell you like, but you can go talk to this lady in the bursar's office or this gentleman to say, can I set up a payment plan? Can I get an extension?
mhm,
Those kind of things. So just
mhm,
knowing that you have the agency to ask for those kind of things, students who have a background and structural support to advise on that. Otherwise you think, oh, if I can't pay by this date, for example, I
mhm,
just can't continue with college. So that hidden curriculum, those things that you almost have to figure out
mhm,
campus by campus, and it's different for every campus. So it's just a
mhm,
matter of asking a lot of questions. So when you feel stuck and not know where to go, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people around you who probably have the same question, have been asking it for
mhm,
years. So you just need to find somebody to talk to. There are staff and faculty and peer groups and organizations on campus that are
mhm,
dedicated to helping students succeed and navigate that transition. So don't ever feel
mhm.
like you're alone. And then the other piece that I think is linked is this concept of the imposter syndrome. And again, I
Yes.
had that as a first generation college student because
Mhm.
I'm a first gen student and I didn't have a
Yeah.
family structure that said I could look at and go, okay, my parents did this or whoever else
Mhm,
did these things. When I get to college, I'm in classes with people from bigger schools who are seventh generation college students, and the expectations were that they would go to college no matter what. And so I was just waiting to be found out that they made a mistake by admitting me. They were going to walk in the middle of a class and escort me out. Go, Mr. Williams,
Dr. Williams, you got to
have
go.
to step out. Yeah, exactly. So, but I would say like that school admitted you wherever you go, however selective that school is,
Mhm,
luxuriate in, expand, take up the space that you've been granted in that moment. So
mm,
set that aside. Now, I'll say as a 50-year-old, I still have imposter syndrome when I walk into certain
mhm,
meetings or jump into
mhm,
Zooms to do certain things. It subsides more quickly than it did when I was 17-year-olds and started college. It took
mhm.
years before that went away in college. But I think if you go in knowing that if you have those feelings of, I can't figure this out or I don't deserve to be here, there are spaces,
Yeah.
there are people that can help you navigate that.
Yeah, no, asking questions. And then what I loved, what you were talking about, taking up space. Like, be excited that you were selected. Don't doubt that. And I know some of our students are in college or about to go to college. And once they realize, hey, I'm here, like, oh, did I really deserve this? Yes, yes. You're
Yeah.
saying, yes, you did deserve it. Walk in that gift that you received. And I'm also sure that you know that being a first gen college student, which we've talked about a little bit, can have its highs, right? And can have
Mhm.
its lows. So for our listeners that are right now, they're in the throes
Mhm.
of it as a first gen student going into college, who or what was your greatest encouragement as a first gen college student when things got, a little tough?
I was a junior, fall of my junior year. I was taking a small history seminar, and
Mm-hmm.
the professor that on a Thursday class, I remember it was a Thursday, it was my birthday, that
Mm-hmm.
he asked, like, can we meet for lunch today? I was like, oh, sure, yes, that's great. And so he took me out to lunch. He didn't know it was my birthday, but it was just a lovely
Mm-hmm.
birthday present in the end, although I was sweating buckets the entire time of the lunch. But what he shared with me was that we had to turn in weekly reflection papers based on our readings once a week, and then we have robust discussion in the class. It was a very
Mm-hmm.
Socratic 13 people, I think, in the class. So a very small, great seminar size class. And he would say, what you write in your papers is very clear and articulate and dead on your reflections, but I need you to speak more in class. And I was still dealing with that imposter syndrome of like, I don't deserve to speak. These other people who went to bigger high schools or are more confident in speaking, even though they're not saying a lot. They're saying a lot of words, but they're not saying much. But he challenged me in that lunch. He goes, you have a lot of good ideas, and I want to challenge you for the rest of the semester, which was all of 3 or 4 weeks at that point. Every class meeting, I want you to step up and share your ideas in class that you're sharing through these papers. And if you don't, I'm going to
Wow.
ding you. You're going to get a bad grade. I took it the moment he was
Mm.
joking, but that was some
Yeah.
encouragement because I'm A type neurotic. I've got to please whoever's in front of me.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Pleasers.
but exactly, but just him taking that time. This was a fully tenured professor who's the most learned person on the subject of this course, which was intimidating to even take the course with him, would take the time to take me to Lizard's Thicket. It was a place in Columbia called Lizard's Thicket. It was a meat and three kind of place. We ate a lot of fried food and things with mayonnaise and a lot of butter. But he gave me that encouragement. And that again, that was fall of my junior year. So it was 2.5 years into college before I kind of had that critical moment, pivotal moment that kind of made me see myself in a different way, that made me release some of the tension or the resistance I had about the imposter syndrome, waiting to be found out. I was found out in the other direction. Like, I did deserve to be there. And that conversation with him affirmed that for me.
That's so cool. I'm thinking just like eating all of that fried foods, right? But then having the person there, the teacher there, to take their time out of their day to say, hey, you have something there. There's something in you, and I need to bring it out. And look at where you are now. Like, that professor just started. Yeah, you're talking to me, but you're at Coca-Cola. You're doing all these huge things, which is so great. And I know our first and second gen students that are hearing this are going to be like, yes, this is exactly what I need to tell myself, to speak up, to raise my hand, to ask questions. So thank you so much for sharing that. And let's jump right into the reason that we are here today, Dr. Williams, which is the Coca-Cola Scholarship, right? This is an OG scholarship program, guys. Like, I call it OG because I feel like it's been around for a really long time. When was it started, Dr. Williams?
The Scholars Foundation itself started in 1986, but the first scholarships were awarded in 89. So we've awarded 36 classes of high school seniors a scholarship to go to college in the U.S. So about 7,000 total people since 1989.
Wow. So 1989. So this is truly an OG. I'm dating myself because I'm actually
just the term OG. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We're trying here. So can you take a little bit of time to talk to our first and second gen high school senior students about the Coca-Cola Scholars Program, the eligibility, the funding amount, what qualifies, all of the things?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with sharing that about 15 to 20% of our scholars every year are first-gen students. So if you're looking at this, I know a lot of times we lurk in Reddit and College Confidential and all the discussion boards, and people think, oh, if I can't get into X school, I'm not going to get the scholarship. That's not the case. That's not the case for all the things you could possibly apply for: Coke Scholars, different colleges, other scholarships. So if you don't apply, that's a no. You may apply and get a no, but only by applying can you possibly get a yes. So that's just general advice. So don't discount yourself from applying for things. But the Coca-Cola Scholars Program, we offer $150,000, $20,000 scholarships every year to high school seniors. Our application opens on August 1 every year. So as we're recording this, we've been open a little over 2 weeks. It closes at the end of September, 5 p.m. Eastern on September 30th. You can find us on the website that'll be popping up here from a slide. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes to do the first round application. I'll tell you what's all involved in that after I talk about the eligibility. But to apply, you have to be in your final year of high school. We used to say seniors in high school, but we would get comments from people saying, oh, we don't call them seniors, we're fourth years, or I won't be a senior until I finish my courses in December, but I will graduate. So in your final year of high school, the year that you will graduate is when you can apply. You have to plan to be attending a college in the U.S. So if you're planning to go abroad, the scholarship can't be used there. You actually have about 10 years to use the scholarship. So it's very generous in terms of time frame. A lot of our recipients receive other scholarships that cover the full cost of tuition or add up to the full cost of tuition and fees. You have to be attending a high school in one of the 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, or a Department of Defense school. And so that's based on our funding model. So our funding comes both from the Coca-Cola Company and the Coca-Cola bottling system, which are two different entities, which would take a whole other podcast to explain. But so if you're from the Virgin Islands or Guam, or you're attending an expat school abroad and you are an American citizen, unfortunately, you're not eligible for our award. That's just based on the funding model. And you do have to meet the citizenship requirements to be eligible for the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. You don't have to apply for the FAFSA for us, but that's our citizenship threshold. So if you meet the FAFSA requirements, you meet our requirements there. And the last thing is you can't be the child or grandchild of a current Coke employee or a retiree who's receiving benefits. So those are the eligibility criteria. When you start the application, there's a quick quiz at the beginning saying, hey, are you graduating high school this year? Are you going to college in
Yeah.
the US? All those
Mhm.
things I just said. So basically, if you answer yes or no in the right combination, the full application will open to you after that. If you accidentally answer a question incorrectly, you can correct the quiz and just contact us. And you just have to
Oh,
verify
okay.
that, oh, I said yes, I meant no, and we'll let you move
Mhm.
through the process there.
What's the if we because I see, yeah, on the slide it says eligibility quiz. So that's the quiz that
That's the quiz.
you're talking about. And you said there's like 7 questions on it or
There's 7 questions, and they basically say, are you graduating this year? Are you going to high school in the US, DC, Puerto Rico, or Department of Defense school? Are you going to college in the
okay.
US? Are you the child, grandchild, those kind
Mhm.
of things. It's not a knowledge-based quiz. We're not asking who
Mhm.
the Secretary of War under
Yeah.
Millard Fillmore was or something. So don't stress about the word quiz. You can pass
Yeah.
this quiz quickly and easily. And what we hear from applicants is once they get in and once they have their transcript in front of them and
Mhm.
a resume or a list of the things they've done in high school and
Mhm.
leadership service involvement, takes about 20 to 30 minutes to copy and paste
Okay.
and key in things for the different sections of the scholarship. So 20 to 30 minutes on the way to $20,000 is not a bad trade-off.
Yeah, no, this is super good. And I want to kind of circle back a little bit and talk about the fact that you don't need to be attending an Ivy because
Right.
when I was researching and preparing, I saw a lot of the recipients do go to Ivies, but can you just reiterate that point again?
Yeah, absolutely. About 2/3 of our students, scholarship recipients, do attend an IB or a highly selective like MIT, Stanford, those kind of things,
Mhm.
or a highly selective public institution like the University of California system,
Mhm.
Texas, Michigan, Virginia, North Carolina, Chapel
Mhm.
Hill, those kind of schools. About 20 to 30% every cycle will go to smaller public schools, less selective private schools, smaller regional
Mm.
schools. Over the history of
Okay.
the program, some students have spent their first 1 or 2 years at a junior college, community college, getting some of their general education requirements out of the way before transferring to a 4-year institution. So, again,
Wow.
lurking in Reddit and College
Mhm.
Confidential, we see a lot of folks saying there's no point in applying because I'm not going to go to an IB
Mhm.
or a highly selective. But again, don't discount yourself in that way. You can't get these things if you don't apply for them. And so, kind of goes back to that imposter syndrome idea of like, oh,
Yeah.
all the things I've done in my small community won't elevate me
Mhm.
to the Coke Scholar level. That's not the case. We have students from middle of nowhere, everywhere, United States, who
Yeah.
become Coke Scholars and are surprised by it, but they've had a profound impact in their schools and communities through their
Mhm.
leadership and service, and that's what we look for.
Yeah, yeah, no, this is good, to dispel to get rid of that myth,
Mhm.
like, "Nope, guys, everyone needs to be applying, don't count yourself out in the application process, submit it." And so, you
Absolutely.
did mention that if you completed the eligibility quiz, like, incorrectly or clicked the wrong button, you could contact you guys. Is there an email
Mhm.
that they would do that for that you can give
Yeah,
us, or
the best email is scholars@coca-cola.com. That dash
okay.
in the Coca-Cola is important. If you send it to just at coca-cola.com, that goes somewhere. It doesn't go to us. We
Mhm.
don't know, but scholars@coca-cola.com. And there's also within the application a chance to upload a verifying document if you get something wrong. So it's rare that somebody would have to contact us to correct something because within the application itself, it can be corrected.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Okay. No, this is good. And um, I want to lean in a little bit and talk about the merit-based scholarship versus
Hmm.
a need-based scholarship. And that did pop up a lot in my research.
Hmm.
So for our first and second gen students that are kind of like, what's the difference? How does this relate to the Coca-Cola scholarship? Can you talk a little bit about merit-based versus needs-based?
Yeah, we aren't need based at all. And need based, you'll see a lot of colleges have financial aid awards, or a lot of other scholarship providers are need
Mhm.
based, meaning you would have to report in your application the most recent year's tax documentation from the household, your primary household. We don't
Mhm.
ask for that. Some folks say they want to award it to students who come from households that are low below a certain level.
Mhm.
We're open to anybody. So we always have, as I said earlier, we have 15 to 20% of our students, scholars are first gen students. 15 to
Okay.
25% of our students report household incomes of $50,000 or lower. So
Okay.
we do see a lot of great diversity in terms of the type of
Mhm.
communities, type of households they come from. We do have students who come from households that report the highest tier, but it's pretty much evenly distributed throughout. We ask basically below 25,000 and then $25,000 increments up to a certain point. But we don't take that in consideration for selection. What we do look at is the merit based. The merit is based on the positive impact that students can articulate that they're having at their schools or in their communities through their leadership, service, and involvement. And leadership doesn't necessarily mean you're the president of something or founder or captain. It can mean that. It can also just mean I identified a problem or a challenge or an opportunity in my school or community, and I rally people around me to address that challenge in a positive way. And that might mean that you're just one of many who's doing it, but you are the person who inspired the people around you to come along with you to address the challenge. It isn't title based necessarily. A lot of our students who get the scholarship are presidents, captains, founders, those kind of things. A lot of them may not have any of those titles, but they're able to articulate impressive leadership and service impact where they are.
Yeah. So, okay. So it's leadership and service. And what I like about it, because Dr. Williams and I were talking before we press record, I did Peace Corps. And so I'm all about like service and everything. And service doesn't mean you have to be the leader. Service can mean like you like you said, you rallied people around and you're able to serve, and help and be that catalyst inside of an organization, and not be just like the president or something. So that's really cool to hear. And I want to ask you the question of the hour. With the $20,000, the funding requirements, is there a limit on how it is used? What's the limit on how it's used?
Yes. And our director of finances would be remiss if I didn't articulate that as clearly as possible. But for the most part, our students do use it for tuition and fees for undergrad. About 75% do use it for that. Some of them, like I said, if they have other outside scholarships that they have to use during college, they may save ours for grad school. But again, the majority do use it for undergrad tuition and fees. They can use it toward anything that a university charges. So housing, meal plans, books. You can, if you can negotiate with your local bookstore that we can send a check to them. You can use it for a new laptop or tablet device once every 4 years if you need that. Any required academic expense. What you can't use it for is organizational dues, fraternity sorority dues, study abroad paid to an organization abroad. If they do a study abroad and it's through an organization based in the United States, we can help pay for that. Or pretty much any educationally justifiable expense. A few years ago, there was a scholar who requested a $250 Michael Kors laptop sleeve. And we're like, Walmart's got it for $20, and we're not going to pay for either. But
that's so funny. I mean, they're trying to look stylish, right?
I mean, like I said, that's the flip side of the coin. Like if you don't ask, you have no. So you may ask and get no, like this scholar did. But God bless that person for trying.
They're trying. It helps, It helps with them being able to get those A's when they look at that.
Exactly. Stylish in the way to class.
Exactly. Are there thoughts on increasing the amount in the future? Because 20,000, like, I don't know, with inflation, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. 20,000 and it's been 20,000 for many years. The cost of higher education has gone up, obviously astronomically in a way that we haven't tracked. So we've had conversations about it. At the same time, we get, and don't let this number freak you out, people who are watching, but we'll get 100,000 applicants for 150 scholarships. So we're not, if we saw a market drop in the number of applicants, we would maybe revisit that. But we know that 20,000 doesn't go as far as it did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago.
I think that's good because $20,000 does still make an impact. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, and what I have seen, because I've received a lot of scholarships as well, is that if you get one, sometimes you'll get others because they're like, oh, you're coming from this organization. Okay, so now we're just going to pile on these other ones. And so, you start off with 20, but by the end, you could have like the full thing covered.
I'll say years, so. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say, too, that our application opens August 1 every year, which is very early in the scholarship application cycle. We pretty much parallel when college applications open, late summer, July maybe, but mostly August 1-ish. What we have found by polling our applicants is that they felt comfortable and encouraged to apply for other scholarships because they got through our obstacle course of an
Yes.
application, which again takes 20 to 30 minutes. You just have to have the information to copy paste and plug it in.
Yes.
But the majority of our scholars every year get multiple scholarships. Majority of our applicants tell us they feel more comfortable and confident and encouraged to apply for more. So they've got everything that they need in front of them to apply for multiple things. So it snowballs from there. You can get a good momentum going for searching out and applying for scholarships when you start with us.
Yeah, you're like the primer. It's like, okay, come on,
Right.
guys. Like, yeah, we're about to start scholarship season. Do the Coca-Cola Scholarship application, and you're ready and off to the races to continue.
Yeah.
And when you've worked with the Coca-Cola Scholarship Program since what year?
2015.
2015. Okay, yep. Because you just said you had your 10-year, like 10-year anniversary.
You started year 10. I'm in year 10
you just
now.
started year 10. Okay. And so when you look back to almost a decade, right? Why do you love the Coca-Cola Scholarship Program so much? Like any story or moment that stands out for you?
Yeah, collectively, it's a network, as I said earlier, of about 7,000 recipients back to the first year, 1989. And they're doing remarkable, creative, important things. They're members of Congress. They're presidents and leaders of colleges and universities. They're entrepreneurs. They're also seventh grade social studies teachers in a small county in Iowa having a profound impact where they are. So what we select for, like I said, is the positive impact they're having in their schools and communities through leadership and service. That tracks from the youngest scholar now to the oldest scholar. So it's a very profound, impactful network of change makers and world shakers that's out there. And I think going back to the value of the scholarship being $20,000, grand scheme of things, it's not that much depending on where you go to college. So we think the real value of becoming a Coke Scholar is joining this network that is inspiring and supportive. The youngest scholar can reach out to the oldest scholar for feedback on a resume, or do you have any internships available? Or I'm going to be in your city. Can we meet up and share a Coke? So just the network and community that forms around this scholarship program has been pretty impressive to see. And then thinking specifically of a first gen student, I think to the final phase of our selection, after we have those 100,000 applicants, don't let that discourage you. Please apply.
Yes.
Of those 100,000, about 1,500 do a second round application with essays and a recommendation. From there, we interview 250 finalists to identify the 150 scholars. Years ago, I interviewed a young woman who became a Coke Scholar, first generation student, child of immigrants, and she came from tough community circumstances. She was the youngest, the only daughter, and what her mother shared with her, that she shared with us in the interview, is that a pencil weighs less than a shovel. So she took that as an inspiring mantra. So when she felt down, didn't feel like going on, going to college is the best path forward for you. Otherwise, the manual labor or the heavier lifting that metaphorically embodied by a shovel. So when she left the interview, like all of us teared up because we were just so moved by what she shared. But working with those kind of students for whom this $20,000 can be make or break about going to their first choice college or college at all is pretty remarkable. I resonate, I gravitate towards them because, again, first gen myself, and I keep an eye on how they're doing. And it's great to see them thriving and taking the lessons they learned from this network, this community of other Coke Scholars, going forward and being successful in college, however they define success for themselves.
Yeah, that is a really powerful statement. The pencil versus the shovel. Yeah. And how that education can open doors. I mean, that's one of why we're here at the New College Mindset, helping people throughout their time in college, because your life will change once you complete it. And you do it the right way with the networks and all of that, which is what you guys also offer. So our first and second gen listeners should now have like a really strong understanding about the Coca-Cola Scholarship and feel ready to apply. So as Dr. Williams is saying, like, don't let the number discourage you. You need to submit your application. And so I want to do that with you. Like, I want to spend some time talking about the application process and making it more accessible for our students that are listening. We're going to start with an overview. So what are the main pieces of the application process? Where can they apply? And then when is it due? And if you have anything else you want to kind of put in that first question.
Yeah. I'll say there's 3 phases to the application. I mentioned earlier, phase 1 is the open application phase. We're open now, August 1 to September 30th every year. On the slides here, you'll see cokeurl.com/apply 2025 will get you to our application page. You can also just Google Coca-Cola Scholars Program application. That'll help you find it. In that first phase application, in addition to the eligibility quiz to make sure you're graduating this year from a U.S.-based high school and going to college in the U.S., those things I talked about earlier. Once you're in the application, there's 4 main sections. We ask for school activities, your leadership service involvement awards for anything that you've done that's been sponsored by your school. So the typical National Honor Society, maybe there's a Habitat for Humanity chapter at your school, those kind of things fit under school activities. The second big section is community activities. Those are things that are not affiliated with your school, any non-school sponsored activities. So that could be like a local theater, if you happen to work in the local mayor's office in some way, and awards or honors you may have received for those activities. The third part is academics. You self-report your grades. You need to report 3 classes in each of math, English, science, and social studies. You can report up to 5 in each of those, but at least 3 qualifies you to advance. And then the fourth section is employment. So we know a lot of students either choose to work or really have to work throughout their high school career. So we want to make sure that applicants get credit for the time that they're working, because we know the more they work, the less time they have for activities at their school or in their community. Once all of those are in, we have a scoring process where scores are assigned. So, for example, for the activities, if you say you're the president or founder or leading person in an activity, that may be, for example, this is not what it is, but for example, that may get you 5 points, vice president 4 points, and then down the line, a member is 1 point. Same thing for grades. If you report a grade of A, let's say that's 5 points, a B is 4. If it's an advanced placement, IB, if there's some rigor level, you may get a kicker point or 2. And then down the line for that as well. What we do once the application closes and to advance for phase 2 is we look at groupings of applicants from within a selection district. So you're not competing against everybody in the country, but from within your selection district. So for example, I'm in Atlanta. So Georgia is in a selection district with South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, and Puerto Rico. So everybody's considered within their own selection district. And then what we do is we look at to advance about 130 or so applicants from each selection districts. We may look at the top 800 scores to get a good mix of where they're from, state-wise, from the Coca-Cola bottler territories. We want to make sure that there's good representation from the people who fund the scholarship. So we look at bottler territories within the selection district. And about 130 in each of the 10 selection districts, so 1,300 total, are invited to the round 2 semifinalist application. And that's where you have more space as a semifinalist to tell us more detail about the impact of your leadership service and involvement, both in your school and your community. So what impact did you have specifically in terms of raising money or affecting change or changing a bad policy, whatever it might be? But also, what was the impact of the experience on you? What did you learn? How did it shape your mindset? How did it help you figure out who you are and what you want to do longer term? So more detail about your activities. There's a few essays. Don't freak out. You can adapt essays you've used for elsewhere. They don't have to be original just to us. We do keep an eye on the Common App to see if there's some alignment between what we're asking generally and what some of the Common App essay options are. So you can definitely adapt or just copy paste. It's less important that it's original for us than that we're learning about you. You also, at this point, have to have a school official upload a transcript, an official transcript in our system.
As I was going to ask you.
Yeah, you self-report your grades first in the first round, and then a transcript is uploaded by a school official in the second. We always see a little bit of attrition for folks who maybe don't complete it when they say, oh, did I say I got all A's and everything? Yeah. And now somebody has to give you a transcript? Never mind. So we figured that's a small... oops. So the computer did it. The last piece of the second round application is a letter of recommendation or a recommendation form. And we only ask for one. And that can be from anybody who can speak to your character, your impact, what you've accomplished, your potential, those kind of things. So a teacher, an advisor, a coach, a boss, a mentor, anybody who can speak to those things. It's less important that it's a particular person that they can speak thoughtfully and meaningfully about your experience. And then of those 1,300 total, 130 in each of our 10 selection districts who are semifinalists, we have a process by which we have 10 3-person teams to read and evaluate every application within a selection district. And these are people who work in admissions, college admissions on the higher education side, or maybe they're school counselors, maybe they're older Coca-Cola scholars who've been through this process, who are gatekeepers of the network of the new folks coming in.
Yeah.
After that round of review of the 130 or so applications in each selection district, they ultimately identified 25 of those 130 who moved to phase 3 to be interviewed on a virtual interview. They're Zoom-based 25-minute interviews that are in typically late January, early February. And it's one Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation staff member and 2 or 3 older Coke scholars who conduct these interviews over the course of a weekend. Interview those 25 in a selection district to identify which 15 of these 25 will be identified as Coca-Cola scholars to receive that $20,000 scholarship.
Wow. That is a process. That is a super intense process. I mean, how do you feel at the end of all of it?
A lot of the gray hair comes from that as well.
Yeah. It's just like, it's like this and this and this and this and this. Have you like changed up the process at all, or just kind of like adapted it over the years? I guess with the bringing in technology, now having it virtual.
Yeah, it used to be the phase 1 application timeframe used to have an extra month. It used to open August 1 and close October 31st. I was like, we close on Halloween. It's a scary deadline. Yeah. But that used to be in the old days when students would actually send in bubbled Scantron type sheets to do all the things that we can capture through our online portal now. And we needed more time to capture the mail and those kind of things. But everything being online, I said about 100,000 will submit an application. Last year, 250,000 started an application. So we have about a 40 to 45% conversion rate from start to complete. But again, don't let that number scare you. Please apply. You're watching this.
Don't hear that number. Take it out of your mind. Yeah.
I don't. I share that often, not to be discouraging, but just to let you know, it's not something to count on. But again, it sets you up for success in applying for other scholarships down the road. So that's been one change, like condensing the deadline for phase 1 a bit. The other significant change is we used to identify more semifinalists to do that second round application with the essays and transcripts and recommendations. What we found, and before I joined the Coke Scholars, I was actually a reader. I would come to Atlanta when it used to be in person, and I sat in the room for 4 days. They locked us in a ballroom at Emory University Conference Center. Here's 225 files. Like, what we've learned over time is 130 finalists versus 225 is probably the sweet spot, because otherwise, we look at the data to see who's going to proceed well through the process. And what we've learned is that the further you get into the list, they're not going to be competitive down the line for this highly selective thing. So it's a waste of their time to do the essays to get the recommendation of the readers' time. So we want readers to have more time to more thoughtfully review and consider each application as opposed to having to fly through them. So those have been 2 of the more significant changes we've had.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I love the fact that you guys are always like assessing, like, okay, this worked, this didn't work, instead of like, okay, we always are going to do it like this. What tips do you have for applying and making a strong application? Because we have seen those numbers, right? But like, what tips do you have for applying?
Yeah, I would say in the same mindset of applying, don't discount yourself. Don't discount it. Individual experience when you're in the application, like, well, I've done this thing, but that's not really good enough, so I'm not going to put it in. If there are blocks and spaces and fields in that phase 1 application that are available and you have something that aligns with that, submit it. Whatever you've done, we want to know about. So you don't make that decision. Let us make that decision. So you just kind of drop everything in there and let us kind of assess everything along the way. So don't discount any individual experience. And if you've done something that you're not quite sure where it fits, that's when you can email us at scholars@coca-cola.com and say, here's my resume, or explain the circumstance. Like, would that be a school or community thing? Is this work versus service? So in the employment section, we say that it's work for pay. There's a lot of students who do work, but it's truly voluntary. So, and then 2, another thing, we ask students to self-report the number of service hours they've done each year of high school, and with an estimate in their final year of high school, what they estimate serving by the December timeframe. It doesn't have to be what you may officially register with your school. If you attend one of those schools that say you have to register X number of hours of service every year for a graduation requirement. We know a lot of students do the bare minimum in terms of reporting to their school, but do a lot more service. So if you report 50 hours a year to your school, because that's all you have to do, but you do another 200 hours over the course of the year, you can say 250. What you don't want to say is 40,000 hours a year, because there aren't 40,000 hours in a year. And some people do that. So we have flags to catch what seems to be like, oh, this person never sleeps if they do this and everything else they're saying. So we'll catch you. We'll figure it out. So don't discount the things you're doing. Tell us everything.
So
and if you're not sure, reach out to us and ask. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So include everything. And then the question I had is like, do you like list the information? Just say, like, for example, I worked at the library, or you like, hey, I worked as a shelver in the library, or do you just write the word library? Like how?
Yeah. And for the employment section, for example, in the first phase, there's fields you just enter. So the name of employer, and what we see a lot of times, they've started including their manager's name or the supervisor's like, oh, we don't know. No, you don't put Jamie Williams there. Just say Jamie Williams was my manager at McDonald's or the library. So you put library, and there's space to parenthetically say shelver or McDonald's, fry cook, whatever it might be, whatever the work was. So it's a field that asks who your employer is, how many hours a week during the school year, how many hours a week during the summer. So those are the main field for that, because again, it's an automated scoring process. So we look more for kind of a quantitative submissions at that point. And then if you advance to phase 2, there's space to be more expansive about if you moved up to be the manager of, or the assistant manager of wherever you worked. If it's a fast food place, for example, you can get more detail there. But phase 1, we just need to know basically the hours and the weeks during the school year and the summer.
Okay.
And the same thing for the organization. You can just say, I was in National Honor Society. I held these. There's buttons to say I held the president or highest role or other types of roles. And then how many hours per week, what grades it was. And so we kind of look at consistency and how it's tracked over time. It's not just a series of one-offs, but people have dedicated themselves to individual things. And then there's a possibility to include hours over the course of the year spent in an activity.
Are there any like tricky parts of the application that you often tend to see students struggle with?
I think the tricky part I kind of alluded to, but they have worked, but it's not for pay, or they got a one-time honorarium. It wasn't a regular paycheck. So I think just because we are open to every high school senior in the country, and there are 40,000 plus high schools in the country that do things 40,000 different ways, it's hard to have a single application that captures all possible permutations. So it can be tricky to figure out those things. Like, I'm not sure where this fits. Is this a job as you define it, or is it a service experience? So I think that's where I see most of the emails come in and asking us, where does this fit? But again, if you're not sure, we're not going to hold it against you. We're not going to, because it's 100 and whatever thousand applications that come in and we have an automated process. We do look closely at the top scores, but not all of them. So we're not going to kick somebody out who said, oh, you got paid for this and you said you didn't. So therefore you're null and void. But I would say that scholars@coca-cola.com email is going to be your friend to help you figure out things that aren't quite clear. The good thing too is when the application is open, if we see a trend of questions coming in, we can go in and edit and add some clearer directions or highlight by this we mean this. So it's always a good idea to go in and refresh to see like, oh, Jamie just added a clarifying statement there.
Yeah, no, this is really good. And I think it kind of goes back to what you talked about in the beginning about like asking questions, and just like as first and second gen students to not feel shy to send that email and say, hey, I have this. Is this what you mean? Versus just assuming and saying, oh, I don't fit this box, so I'm just going to walk away.
Exactly. And we even see that with the eligibility quiz when they upload, if they accidentally, for example, say that I said yes, that I'm a child or a grandchild of an employee, but I'm actually not. They can just upload a simple statement, a screenshot from their phone saying, my name, I'm not a child. Some of them are so apologetic for getting that wrong. And I'm so sorry. I hope this doesn't discount my application. And I did not mean to lie. Like, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
So, but if you're first in and you don't have context and support structures in place, and they're like, this is okay. We're not dealing one-on-one necessarily with you. We're looking at the totality of who's applying, and we just need you to clarify this one thing, and please proceed and do your best.
Yeah, no, that's, I love it. And the last question I have before we kind of go to the next part is the interview itself. Do you have any tips for preparing for the interview? I know it's just 20 minutes, and I'm assuming
Yeah.
talk about yourself, but any things that you think would be helpful for our first and second
Yeah.
gen listeners?
We do have a whole page of advice and guidance we share with
Oh,
students when they get to
okay.
that stage. And it's so
Hmm.
cliche to say, be yourself, but be yourself. We want to know genuinely who you are as a person because we're trying to build
Hmm.
this community and network of people who care about others around them. And
Yeah.
we need to know that you're one of those types of people. I would say for our interview and really most other interviews, you don't want to come in with rigid prepared talking points and things that you're going to talk about no
Okay.
matter what you're asked,
Hmm.
like a political debate.
Hmm.
Like, oh, that's a great question
Hmm.
about the cost of Cheerios. And now I want to talk about this thing that's happening in wherever in the world. Um,
So true.
it's okay to kind of like think through like what is the headline when this is all over. They'll have interviewed 25 over the course of 2 days. What's the headline or the
Hmm.
top 2 bullet points I would want them to remember about me when
Hmm.
they're considering who to make the scholarship offer to you? Now, that may seem
Hmm.
counterintuitive to what I just said. Don't have talking points, but just think about your values, what's important to you, how you've arrived at becoming the person you are,
Yeah.
and how you want to move next. Make sure that those are the kind of things that you leave behind. And that can
Hmm.
be a way of, and you can get there by articulating, this is why
Hmm.
I've spent so much time in animal rescue or nursing home
Yeah.
or biomedical research or whatever the thing
Hmm.
might be that you're doing. It could also be too that you've got family circumstances where you have to work a lot to contribute to the family's income, that you
Hmm.
have somebody in your family, a sibling, an
Hmm.
elderly member of your family, that you have
Hmm.
to spend a lot of time during the every day, every week, supporting
Hmm.
them and providing support and care for them. That limits the other things you can do. So you
Hmm.
can include that kind of information in your application in phase one as communities
Hmm.
activity service outside of school stuff. And you can also talk about it in your interview. What's pretty interesting to see in some of these interviews is we ask questions basically to figure out who you are as a person, what inspires you, what makes
Yeah.
you tick, how's that help you figure out what you want to do next. Sometimes it's the first time these students have been asked to reflect on those kind of things. And so they get emotional in that moment. So that student that I shared earlier who said her mom's mantra of pencil weighs less than a shovel, that like she got teary in that moment when she left. We got all teary after she left. But people have profound moments. And then later on, when they're chosen as a Coke Scholar and they come to Coke Scholars Weekend in Atlanta, they thought, I knew I wasn't going to get it as soon as I started crying, but I'm here. How did that
Yes.
happen? Like, you are a genuine, authentic person who showed vulnerability.
Hmm.
And it isn't just crying will get you the scholarship,
Yeah.
but you were thoughtful and reflective about something, and it was important to you, and you articulated that in a clear way.
Yeah, no, this is really good. And I'm currently like, honestly, Dr. Williams, just shaking my head because I wish I had known about this opportunity when I was preparing in high school to go to college. And I think it was just so hard to find this stuff like in the high
Mhm.
school that I attended. So our listeners right now, guys, you're listening, you can go out there and you can apply. And once they have, let's say they make it to the 100, one of the 150 spots, right? We're cheering
Mhm.
everybody on. I would love for you to kind of give us a peek onto the other side. So
Mhm.
what happens once a student receives the Coca-Cola scholarship? Have you had any crazy stories? I think you just mentioned one of students like not believing they won it type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, every year when we bring them to Atlanta for Coke Scholars Weekend, we bring all
Mhm.
150 to Atlanta. We have a big celebratory banquet with big name speakers, and then we have a leadership program that we put them through in a good way. That's not horrible. We put
Mhm.
them through this thing. We have a leadership curriculum that we walk them through to understand what leadership means within the Coke Scholars community. And so
Mhm.
every time we see them, there's always a handful. A lot of times it is first gen students or those from lower income backgrounds. Like, I
Mhm.
don't understand why I'm here. What did you see in
Mhm.
me? And so it's great to have those interactions with students and kind of tell them, if I interviewed them in particular or read their application at some point, to say like, this is what stood out for you. So this is something you need to like
Yeah.
lean into and be sure to highlight as you go forward in your life. But beyond the Scholars Weekend, we have a lot of programs to connect them within their community. If they're on a college campus, when they start college in the fall, we have a program called Slices for Scholars. If there's at least one other scholar on your campus, we will reimburse you for a welcome back pizza party or low cost food thing. So there are campuses where there are 80 to 90 Coke scholars, and they get together and they
Mhm.
have a big picnic outside and send us pictures. We've had
That's
two
so
students at
cool.
Ohio State or Mississippi State or Ball State. They've all been state
Mhm.
schools I say this out loud. But they'll send us, the two of them go out for pizza, and we give one of them $30 to reimburse them for that. So just kind of a fun social way to get to know who the other Coke Scholars are. Throughout the year, I have a colleague who does a lot of engagement programming, both in person and virtual program around. We have a series called the Coke Scholar Pro Series, where older scholars who are established in their fields or have a certain expertise will do a webinar to do some training or some education around writing effective letters to the editor, but particular expertise that is shared.
Yeah.
So we'll have that's open to all 7,000 scholars. Thankfully, not all 7,000 don't show up because it would crash our Zoom account. But we'll have a lot of things throughout the year. But what's interesting is there are 150 Coke Scholars a year, so 7,000 total back to 1989. They are together once in their lives for Coke Scholars Weekend, and all 150 in a cohort are never together again because they go to college all over the place. But 9 out of 10, we do regular surveys, 9 out of 10 will tell us that this network is the most or one of the most important, both personal and professional networks to which they belong, which is profound. The colleges and universities would love to have, alumni offices would love to have that kind of response rates to surveys, first of all. Identity and affiliation. There's just something about, there's a magic to this Coke Scholars Network. When more than one Coke Scholar gathers, there's a magic that occurs and some great collaborations and some fun that happens. And I've been saying for going on now 10 years that I've been here, if we could figure out how to bottle this affinity and affiliation they have, which anybody could, it should be Coke to figure out how to bottle this. Other scholarship providers, like, how do you do this for your students? And we basically build this network, connect them, and then kind of get out of the way and provide some programming along the way. But it's just amazing coming from my background working on a college campus and seeing cohorts in person daily, that Coke Scholars have the same affinity and affiliation for their network as somebody who's been someplace for 4 years in person with somebody.
Yeah, I think it's because they've gone through like this rigorous process. And then it's like, we've all made it. And then that's the camaraderie. And you see like, hey, these are, because you're picking such rich people as far as like their leadership and their care and concern for others, it's just a natural fit. Like if you meet someone, like I'm meeting you, right? It's just like, wow, you really care about people. I care about people. It's like, okay, you kind of don't forget that connection. So I think that's one of maybe the secret sauce that you guys have.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Dr. Williams, as we are kind of landing this plane right now, you've shared a lot of really amazing information today. And I want to get a little bit real in these next few questions and ask, what would you say to the first or second gen student that reads, the acceptance percentage of like 0.16% and says like, man, I can't imagine myself getting that. I shouldn't even apply. I know it's costing the minds of some of our students out there. Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say within that 0.16% of applicants who becomes Coke Scholars, as I said, 15 to 20% of all Coke Scholars are first-gen students. So like with our application, colleges, other scholarships, if you don't apply, you're not going to get it. And to go back to, I think it was the New York lottery, you got to be in it to win it. That's kind of crass cliche. It's 20 to 30 minutes to apply. You're going to be applying to college anyway. We're not asking for anything distinctive from what you're using to apply for college. So it's hopefully a lot of copy paste from your resume or your listing of your activities and work and all that. And the same thing from your transcript. So years ago, there was an article in the local paper that to become a Chick-fil-A franchisee, it's more selective than becoming an astronaut for NASA. It's more selective to become a Coke Scholar than either of those two things. But I think it speaks to, there's an interest of people who see the value and learn about Coke Scholars, this network, as we've been talking about, to support each other and inspire each other, and personally and professionally and intellectually along the way. But I would say I share that number not to discourage, but I share it just to level set expectation sets. But you can't get these things if you don't apply. But again, 15 to 20% identify as first gen students. We don't track even second gen students. So I would not be surprised if about that number are second gen college students as well. But we don't select for that necessarily. That's not a selection criteria being first gen, but it just emerges that a lot of first gen students, for whatever reason, are emerging as strong candidates for our scholarship. And that number, that 15 to 20%, is higher than the number of first gen students. And you can, Jerica, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's higher than first gen students that enrolled in 4-year colleges.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll double check that number too. But I just love the fact that, it's like, just apply. Don't count yourself out.
Mhm.
You're in good company. So that's what I want our listeners to take away from this conversation, that, hey, it's time. We're in the middle of the application season right now. You can go out there right after this and just apply. And so, Dr. Williams, do you have anything else that you think our first or second gen students should hear about when it comes to the Coke Scholars Program, uh, or where they can go for additional questions outside of, I think it's just the email? Maybe you want to say that again,
Mhm.
or anything else?
Yeah. Yeah. Any questions that come up during the application, it is open again for only current high school seniors. So if you're younger
Yes.
than that, August 1, before your final year of high school, every year we open. So go
Hmm.
Google Coca-Cola, or our website is Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation.org, or just Google
Hmm.
Coke Scholars, you'll find us. But again, I think it comes down to, I know I've been pounding this drum along the way, but just apply. You never know.
Yes.
You've got no if you don't apply. You
Hmm.
may get no if you apply, but the only way to get yes is if you pursue something. And I say that
Hmm.
again, not just for us, for the colleges that kind of tickle your brain. I could see myself fitting in there. If you come from a lower income background, a lot of
Hmm.
colleges are investing heavily in students from lower limited income backgrounds.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's a ton of Coke scholars who are at a Harvard, for example, who are first gen low income background, who are almost
Hmm.
fully funded by a Harvard or by another institution. Same thing
Yeah.
when you get to college. If an internship opportunity comes available, apply for it if it looks of interest to you. If there's an award, if there's a
Hmm.
leadership role. So I think going back to what I said earlier about imposter syndrome, if you feel like, if that's tickling your brain, like, I don't deserve this, I don't deserve to be
Hmm.
here, take
Hmm.
up the space that you've been granted by whomever. Um,
Hmm.
and pursue things. You learn a lot when you hear no a
Yes.
lot. I used to jokingly say that we should just
Yeah.
tell everybody they didn't get it and then let them live in that for a week. And then a week later, tell the 150
Uh-huh.
that, oh, no, actually, you
Uh-huh.
did get it, just because most students haven't heard no before kind of
Hmm.
at this level. So there's a lot of personal growth and development that can come from being rejected for something that you pursued.
Yes.
But just kind of think about that, and knowing that, again, that 0.16 advance from the application to getting it, you could be amongst that 0.16, but only by applying can you hope to be there. So don't discount yourself. Do it.
Yes. Don't discount yourself, guys. You hear that from Dr. Williams. And thank you so much, Dr. Williams, for coming on the New College Mindset. Our students are so grateful. So, on behalf of them to you, I just want to say thank you. And guys, get out there and apply to the Coca-Cola Scholars Program today before the deadline of, can you say it one more time, Dr. Williams, the
Yeah.
deadline?
5 p.m. Eastern on September 30th.
Awesome. 5 p.m. Eastern on September 30th. See you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams, for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Good luck to everybody.